Each year, we honor military personnel who serve our country on Veterans Day and remember those who've passed on Memorial Day. But what are the deeper conversations for those struggling with PTSD while serving and especially post-combat? Good evening. I'm your host, Petra, Guiland, and this is ArtSplaining. Tonight, the Coral Springs Museum of Art, along with our panel of guests, discuss the current exhibition from the Smithsonian Institution, 100 Faces of War, honoring veterans who served our country and discussing the repercussions that many veterans faced when returning home from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. We'd like to thank the following: Florida Department of State, Division of Cultural Affairs, Florida Humanities Council, the National Endowment for the Arts, Broward County Cultural Division, Broward County Board of County Commissioners, the Greater Fort Lauderdale Convention and Visitors Bureau, the City of Coral Springs, and the museum's Board of Directors, Scott Brook, Joshua Simmons, Joy Carter, Sean Serra, and Nancy Matayer. And of course, our museum's members. Their support to the Coral Springs Museum of Art provides the community engaging art experiences such as this evening's ArtSplaining. Please join me in welcoming tonight's special panel of guests, Director of Smithsonian Institution, Traveling Exhibition Service, and Smithsonian Affiliations, Myriam Springuel. Interim Director of Florida Humanities, Patricia Putnam. City of Coral Springs Vice Mayor and Board Chair of the Coral Springs Museum of Art, Joshua Simmons. Director of the Coral Springs Museum of Art, Jill Brown. And of course, the artist, Matt Mitchell. Thank you all so much for being here. But before we jump into our conversation, we'd like to view a short promotional video of this incredible exhibition. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us, all of our viewers on Facebook Live, in addition to YouTube. We're so excited that you guys are here with us. We want to join everybody here to have a conversation about what happens when people go through combat and military service and the repercussions of the back end of that. It's usually PTSD. And this is what this entire exhibition talks about. It brings a conversation and a dialogue of what people are going through. Matt Mitchell, Mr. Matt Mitchell, someone I really want to talk to, and you and I are going to have a full conversation on the other side of this presentation. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about was the fact that this project is, you're delving really deep into the psyche of those who served, especially those who served in combat. What was the initial catalyst that created this project?
Initially, it was a combination of things. Of course, I think as most artistic endeavors, but it really one of the things that I felt was to try to impress upon people that war should not be entered lightly, and I wanted to do so in a way that really worked with all the different people for whom that idea is important. You know, people who are in service, as well as all the citizens of the U.S. We should really take things such as war seriously. That was the basic impetus. There were some personal events that led to this as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know that this wasn't something that just happened overnight. This has been going on. You've been exhibiting these portraits since 2005. And from that point, I'd like to, this is really directed to Myriam over at the Smithsonian. At what point did you guys connect? Did you and Matt connect? Because he's been exhibiting them, like I said, since 2005. So how did that come together? Oh, Myriam, I'm sorry. Could you unmute yourself?
So sorry about that. You
Thank you.
by now know better than to be muted on programs. Before I answer the question, let me just say to you, Petra, to Jill Brown, the director, to the board, that the installation at the Coral Springs Museum of Art is just absolutely beautiful. I often have the privilege of seeing one of our exhibitions in multiple different locations, and it is such a treat to see an exhibition that is this beautifully installed. So let me just start by saying congratulations for the installation. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you.
Matt Mitchell, and in answer to your question, Matt Mitchell had already been traveling the exhibition when it was brought to our attention. We have a very rigorous exhibition review process to determine exhibitions that we're going to be involved in. And we look for exhibitions that tell a national story, provide opportunities for communities to tell their own story around that national story, and that support the mission of the Smithsonian. And part of our mission is to tell the story of the diverse American experience and to support conversations on sometimes difficult but essential topics around our communities. And this exhibition and Matt's beautiful portraits and the candor of the text, the quotes by each of the people who are represented really spoke beautifully and eloquently, and that's why we decided to collaborate with Matt Mitchell and to circulate this exhibition.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an incredible show, an absolutely incredible show that is involving 100 oil portraits of all veterans who've served. 10 of them are posthumous, and we'll again talk a little bit more about that later with Matt. I want to talk a little bit about with you, Patricia, because I know that first off, Florida Humanities has always been a leader in supporting programming such as Florida Talks, Poetry Out Loud. And, you know, this is a combination of both you and a grant collaborative process between you and Smithsonian with museums on Main Street, which brought, you know, Pensacola, Daytona, and including our museum, Coral Springs Museum of Art, this exhibition. So tell me how that collaborative work between the two of you or your organizations and institutions came about.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, we're really fortunate to have had such a long-standing relationship with Myriam and her team at sites at the Smithsonian. I believe we've been partnering on bringing Smithsonian exhibitions to Florida for more than a decade now. We work very extensively with them with their Museum on Main Street program, which provides Smithsonian exhibits in small towns and rural communities. But when the opportunity arose to host 100 Faces of War, we were really excited to have funding available for venues across our state to host this really important traveling exhibition as well as organize community events and programs to complement the exhibit and its theme. So we're really proud that we've been able to provide funding for 3 Florida venues to host this exhibit, and the work that you all have done in your community to offer workshops for veterans and make the most of a really difficult year and have virtual opportunities for the public to still see this really important and timely exhibit, so that more people can understand what it means to serve, and more importantly, the challenges of coming home after service. So we applaud you and your team, and we thank Myriam for continuing to work with Florida Humanities to make these opportunities available in Florida.
Yeah, it really has been amazing that Florida Humanities Council has supported this grant for the Coral Springs Museum of Art. In addition to, like I mentioned, Pensacola and Daytona, how have you seen this exhibition resonate with Floridian communities?
Well, you know, I think every community has their unique connection to veterans. Pensacola is a Navy town, and, you know, their history of the military history is quite deep there. And so we started working with the Coral Springs Museum of Art several years ago on workshops, artists' workshops with veterans. And I think that's where our relationship started with your community. And so when this exhibit was available to us, we reached out to the museum and thought it would be a really great complement to the existing work that you all were already doing with veterans in Coral Springs. So every community, and I think Myriam can respond to this from a national perspective, but I think every community has their own unique stories, and we tell it in different ways through different people. And veterans are certainly, you know, an important part of all of our communities and our lives. And this exhibit and Matt's work provide a really unique opportunity to spotlight our veterans and active duty military personnel as well.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear Myriam's comment on that too, in terms of how it has resonated within the nation. It's been traveling for 2 years now, correct?
Absolutely. It's been on the road for a while, and I'm gonna support what Patricia is saying. This exhibition really resonates across the country, and each of the host venues, each of the museums that takes in the exhibition does work with veterans and uses it as an opportunity to explore military life in their town, military life through history in their community, and what's happening today. So it really serves as a backdrop for important conversations. As we know, there are communities and there are people for whom these wars haven't been real present, where very few, as a percentage of the population, very few Americans served in these wars. And for many Americans, and I think, Matt, you tell a beautiful, moving story about this. For many Americans, during the Iraq and Afghan war, a lot of people didn't know people who were serving. And that, of course, is fundamentally different than some of our previous wars. And so providing an opportunity, and one of the strengths of this project is that the veterans are invited to tell their story. And we really took the words that they provided with the exhibition and did not change them. It's what they perceive. And certainly I have heard in galleries and have heard reports in other galleries that people have deep conversations with the people that they came with or with others in the galleries about what some of these quotes say. So for us at the Smithsonian to be able to open up dialogue and to provide a space in which we can talk about things that matter to this nation is one of the things we look for in an exhibition like this.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because that is something that I had spoke to Matt about a couple of weeks back, that this is creating this open dialogue, a necessity that our nation needs to have, a necessary conversation. And it's really important that we continue this conversation. It doesn't stop here at the Coral Springs Museum of Art. It continues on.
And can I just add that that's
Absolutely.
one of the wonderful parts of the collaboration with the Florida Humanities Councils, is that the Florida Humanities Councils is one of those humanities councils across the country who has really made a major effort and has conducted lots of conversations with veterans and with veterans in their communities. And so, yes, the conversation will continue.
Fantastic. I'd like to hear that. Thank you. Vice Mayor Simmons, we're so happy to have you here. You're also the chair of the board of this museum. We're really excited to have you here. And not to mention, we appreciate your support and the commissioners of the City of Coral Springs support. I had heard the grapevine that you have family members who are active duty.
Yes.
Very
mother.
Close. I'm sorry, who is it?
My mother.
Your mother. Okay.
Yes.
Your mother is active duty.
Mm-hmm.
So when I ask you this question, how does this exhibition resonate for you as someone whose mother is active duty?
Thank you for the question. And, before I answer, I'd like to say thank you to the Smithsonian, Florida Humanities Council, and you all for, collaborating and bringing this project and bringing this exhibition to Coral Springs. We love our veterans, we support our military, and it's always grateful to have these stories here in Coral Springs. When I see exhibits like this that tell the stories of people behind the uniform, behind their service, it's important because there's so much work we need to do for our veterans. We need to protect them and support them as we would when they're active duty. There are so many veterans right now that are homeless, so many that are dealing with drug addiction, so many that are just looking for help after they have given their service to this country. And so when you have an exhibition like this, it brings forward those conversations that we need to have to make sure that we are better and treat our veterans better because they really did make a sacrifice, left their families, their kids are raising themselves sometimes, right? All in an effort to make sure that we live in a country that's safe and free. So thank you so much for that question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for being here and your support as well. Our next guest that I believe would love to chat with is the Executive Director of the Coral Springs Museum of Art, Jill Brown. Jill, you came in at almost the beginning of getting this show together. You came in July of this year in the middle of COVID, learning not just the museum, but then this exhibition as well. So tell me a little bit about how that came about.
Yeah, so I started,
and your preparation.
Yeah, well, I started on July 9th in the middle of a pandemic, working remotely, having never met my team here or anyone from the city. And I did not know that this exhibition was on the books until it started. I was like, wow, okay, so how are we going to do this? So we started up, we finally met, and the team here met, we came in, and I looked around and said, all right, well, the first thing we're going to do is paint this museum. So we as a team painted the entire museum. I said, it needs to be brighter. We need to find a way to spread this exhibition out because it was, its footprint was a little bit different originally. I have to say too, I don't want to take all the credit. The leadership team that was in place before are really the ones who got the ball rolling and worked with Smithsonian and Florida Humanities to get this. I happen to be lucky enough with the team here to be able to work with these people on the execution of this exhibit and getting it going. So we had all these thoughts and ideas, we put it in play, and then we're like, okay, well, how can we get anyone over here? So we started talking to the communications department. They said, we'll come and do a film for you. So they filmed a short version, a long version. So then I had to call over and speak to the city and speak to some of the fire chiefs and stuff and risk management and say, listen, this has been pushed, it's been pushed, it's been pushed. We have to find a way to get this open. Talk about a squeaky wheel. I think I drove them crazy. Every day I was filling the paperwork out. They turn it back, go, no, this won't work. I'm like, all right, we tried this. No, that won't work. Or I didn't hear from them. I'm like, hey, did you get my email? Just driving them crazy. So we came up with a resolution, worked out great. We were able to have people in here on a limited basis. Time visits, 90 minutes at a time, no more than 20 people, practicing all the safety protocols, 30 minutes in between the clean. We routed them around so people can come in and out. What's nice about having videos is people who are still not feeling comfortable enough to come out and watch it online and get that aspect of it. It's free of charge for people. We do admission, so anyone can come.
How can you sign up for a ticket?
Yeah, people are interested to get some free admission and be able to come visit. We have an Eventbrite link on our website or in social media. You can find it. You can go there and register. And you register for your time slot. So again, no more than 20 people. You can take a shot and try to come out. If there's a spot available, we will let you in. If there's not, we'll get you on the next list. But We have had, we've had quite a few people come in. It probably hasn't been the attendance was good if we weren't in COVID, but we're really pleased that we had some people coming in live and that we've had a diverse demographic, young, old, all different, races and colors and religions. And it's been lovely. And everybody has had, similar reactions of excitement and emotion. We really, really enjoyed it. So it's been a great exhibition.
Tell me a little bit about the accompanying program, because I know we do have some programming accompanying this exhibition. Tell me a little bit about that.
We did. Throughout the exhibition dates, we had 2 people come and do guest lectures, and they talked about their artwork and how it was influenced by either their family or themselves, time with the U.S. forces and how it affected them. So we offered that to the public, and people did come in and see those people and learn about their videos. We also currently, right now in our back studio, Art for Warriors is happening. We mentioned that earlier about a veterans program for therapy and through art. So they're back there working right now. So we tried to have as many things as we can. It's a difficult time in the country during the pandemic.
Yeah, well, it's been exhibited beautifully, considering what this country is going through with COVID. It's amazing. I do suggest to all of our viewers at home, please come in, go to our website and take a look at it, sign up, get your friends, get your families, get 20 of them. You get a free private showing of this incredible exhibition. You have to come down and see it. Before we close this half of the presentation, I'd like to give a moment for Myriam and Patricia, in addition to Vice Mayor Joshua, if anybody would like to have any final words before Matt and I have an intimate conversation on the other side. We'll start with you, Josh.
Thank you. One person I left out, Matt Mitchell. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for, conceptualizing this, bringing this together. They mentioned earlier that it been traveling for 2 years. And so think about the lives that you have changed and maybe the lives that you've improved and the issues that you've brought to the forefront. And so thank you so much for bringing this to our world.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
With that, this is the last place the show will ever be shown, as far as I know, collectively.
Oh, wow.
So December 30th, please come out.
Oh,
yes, please do. Please do.
Thank you.
Thank you both for being here tonight. Myriam, do you have any final words?
I would say that the real importance of an exhibition like this is that it uses these beautiful portraits, it uses art to talk about and to help us understand and navigate what are sometimes some tough issues, to understand the world better, to be more open to others. And let me encourage you to as well to come visit the exhibition. It's wonderfully installed here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here tonight. We really appreciate your time. Patricia Putnam from Florida. Do you have any final words?
Just a final thank you to you and your team at the museum. You've done an extraordinary job. I have a soft place in my heart for your museum. I've had the pleasure of working with you for a few years now, and I appreciate every cultural organization that is able to keep their doors open during this really, really tough year. And so that you're still there and providing these really important exhibitions and conversations for the public during the most difficult of times. I applaud you and thank you for being such a leader in your community and bringing this to Coral Springs. So congratulations to you. And I'm really looking forward to hearing Matt talk about his work and working with these veterans.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate your time this evening as well. We're going to take a little bit of a break before we go into Matt's conversation. We hope you guys will continue to join us in the next half hour when we speak with Matt Mitchell and we talk a little bit and delve a little deeper into the portraits and his sitters. Thank you so much. And we do want to make sure that you join us on January 28th for the next ArtSplaining. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to the second half of ArtSplaining. This is a very special presentation where we celebrate and honor those who have served, and it's all represented here at the Coral Springs Museum of Art's 100 Faces of War. On this half, at the beginning half of our presentation, we had the Florida Humanities Council, in addition to Smithsonian institutions, representatives, Myriam, and also we had Patricia. We spoke to them for a little bit, and now we have a more intimate conversation with Mr. Matt Mitchell. So I'd like to introduce to you Matt Mitchell. Welcome to the show, Matt. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you.
I saw you a couple of minutes ago. We're so excited that you're here this evening. And we could have a little bit more of a more intimate conversation to delve a little bit deeper into what this show's about and talking about the people who sat for you, talking about some of the statements. One of the questions that I had for you was talking a little bit about the representation of this exhibition. You know, so many past depictions have really focused on the Great War, World War II, or even the Vietnam War. You know, what perspectives did you want to share by concentrating on the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars?
Well, of course, the wars were ongoing when I was doing this project, starting in 2005 and then working on it through 2014. And, you know, a large part of what I was trying to do, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, you know, there were many aspects of going into this, but really just I felt a profound lack of knowledge about what was happening in our historical moment. I didn't know anyone who was serving, and I had no connection to these wars, as a lot of people have no connection to contemporary warfare, because it's only a small proportion of people who serve. But it struck me as wrong to just be able to go on as if nothing was happening. I was perfectly happy. I was working as a painter and illustrator at the time, and it just struck me as deeply troubling that I could essentially ignore the entire thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you mentioned it. It's really that 1% who volunteer their time to protect the 99% of us, which it's in the title of this exhibition, 100 Faces of War. People volunteering their time, which is part of what happened within this project. People were volunteering their time to sit for you, 100 of them. How did you come about with the 100? Because I know you started out with 30 at some point, and then it just continued to grow.
Yes. Well, the number 100 is really, it was kind of in the back of my mind from the very beginning. And what I pictured was, okay, you know, I understand things through portraiture, and initially I wasn't thinking about there being any text in the show. I was just going to do 100 portraits and basically just kind of try and do that way of conveying that war is not something that we enter lightly, or should not be something that we enter lightly, and try and convey that just through simply showing portraits of people who went. But then, and doing a lot, you know, like 100 seems like a really big number.
Yes, it does.
When you're doing paintings of this type, right? But then there's the play with that number. Is 100 is actually a small number. You know, it's a very small number relative to, you know, 1 million. Mm-hmm. So that you can think that I actually forget what the proportions are now, but I believe each portrait in the show, you can figure out how many people that each portrait represents, and it's something like you know, math hasn't always been.
I think the whole show represents 2,500 people in serving in the military, I think is what it was.
Yeah, I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I remember seeing that. I think
portrait represents
incredible.
2,500 people. Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. How did you get the call out to these people to volunteer their time to sit for you? Did you work with Veterans Affairs, or how did that go about?
Well, the first portrait I did, I looked in the local papers because, as I said, I had no connection, and that was I was very, very lucky with the first people that I contacted. So I read a story about a Marine who had committed suicide after being home for a year, which that was a story that in 2005 surprised me because people weren't talking about this kind of thing, and I also was very impressed that his family wanted to talk to the public about it. So I went and I met with the family of Jeff Lucy, with his parents, Kevin and Joyce Lucy, and they allowed me into their home. You know, they welcomed me, and they welcomed the idea that I had, which was really striking, inspiring. You know, here are people who just went through something tremendously difficult, tremendously hard to talk about, and their way of kind of healing or coping with it was to talk with people like me, anyone who wanted to engage and try and figure it out. So they had they were wonderful, and they're very community oriented people. So that they knew some veterans who were speaking in a high school program, or a program that speaks to high schools called the Veterans Education Project in Western Massachusetts, where I started this whole thing. And the Veterans Education Project had been started by some Vietnam veterans who saw the things like Rambo and some of the heavy-duty recruiting efforts that were aimed at high schools. And they wanted to have actual veterans come in and talk in high schools in a way that was that wasn't oriented towards recruiting, but more oriented towards history. So they were a wonderful group I talked with them, and they were able to connect me with a couple other people. And after I did a few portraits, it kind of snowballed. You know, I would work with, you know, in the very beginning, I was working with basically whoever would trust me. You know, here's this artist, you know, and you know, no reason, you know, to really get into, you know, why would, you know, I think a lot of veterans would look at me and say, like, you know, why would I talk to you? You know, why am I going to tell you
my story
important? You know, but then a few people open up, and it was like, after a while, it was like an avalanche. You know, I would have shows, exhibitions regularly, and I, at some point along the way, decided that including what people were talking about was really key. My wife was instrumental in figuring that out, because I'd tell her about these conversations I'd have with people, and she would say, "You've got to include this somehow." And eventually, I broke down and thought, like, okay, I can somehow do this. I think I'm going on a little bit. I'm answering something.
No. It's really fascinating as well, because Mike, one of the part of the 100 is, as we mentioned in the first half of the presentation, was 10 of the portraits are posthumous. Right. So the portrait of those people had passed when you actually did the portrait. How did those 10, and I know your first portrait was actually your first posthumous as well. Did that change the feeling of the exhibition, or do you feel it must have?
Yes. Well, the group of 100 came about from that idea of including what people were saying. That kind of solidified it. like I said, I wanted a big number, kind of had it in the back of my head. But then the idea of including text, including something of the stories, because I was meeting people, I was meeting the Lucys, I was meeting these veterans, we were talking. I feel like you've got to talk in order to kind of understand who someone is, in order to paint their picture and
Absolutely.
really kind of get a feel for them. The portraits, the posthumous portraits, are very difficult because you don't get a feeling, that same feeling. That's why I was talking to the Lucys, was, it's like I can talk to you and you can tell me stories, and I can try as much as I can from that and from the photographs you have to try and do what I usually do. But it was always a stretch with the posthumous portraits. And getting back,
I mean, it's important that
right.
they're included, because we're talking about 100 portraits, and of those 100 portraits, 2,500. It's a representation of 2,500 people, and if 10 of those portraits are posthumous, that's 250 people who've passed.
The math isn't actually. It wasn't a mathematical choice in that case. It was what I tried to do with the rest of the group of 100 was I tried to get people from all different walks of service. People who came from different backgrounds, people who were engaged in different roles, different branches, different ranks. So I knew that this was important when including the words, because if you talk to 100 Marine infantrymen, you'll get one picture of the war. But
Absolutely.
yeah, that isn't the way a war is. You have a huge amount of people behind the scenes who aren't involved in combat. You have supply sergeants. You have people working in mortuary affairs. You have people working as accountants, as paralegals. You have a tremendous variety of people, and this is what we're doing as a country. Is where all of these people are going to war. But I have to answer the question about the posthumous.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I decided on that number, on 10, because as I said, the wars were ongoing. I didn't know what the number would really be in the end. So there was no way to perfectly represent mortality. And I decided it was a good thing to do for families. It was a good thing to do for to kind of stress the idea of what's at stake for everybody who's serving. When you serve, you are, to some extent, your body is the property of the government.
Right.
And this is kind of that's, so this is,
Right. Right.
I say more. Yeah.
Right, you don't. And I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. A lot of what your sitters have shared with the public for the past 2 years are their own words. So they're statements. Every portrait comes with a statement. Tell us a little bit about that, because everybody was able to choose their own words or a poem or what have you. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, you've got it, and you know that this is really key. And I think this is the reason, really it's the words and the way that people chose them. That was the reason why the Smithsonian picked up this project. This is why the Florida Humanities Council is interested in this project and doing such a great job in working with you all. And it's really the core of it all, because I decided early on that the world doesn't really need to hear from me and my opinion about this bigger thing, and I don't need to go around projecting my opinion on this topic, because I want to learn. It's about learning. well, and it's, you know, for me, it was a lot about meeting people and talking with them and learning through that perspective. So I decided the only way to really do this was to have everybody say whatever they wanted next to their portrait. Everybody got a maximum of 250 words. And I set that kind of low so that people could kind of get out a little bit, but everybody would be conscious of what everybody else in the project was saying. And I would ask people to somehow fill in something extra, see if they could add to the conversation. So what you have in that room, in that incredible display that you have, which is really amazing and absolutely the way that I most hoped that this would ever be displayed, what you have is these portraits where you walk around, the eye level of the portraits is about your level. The people, I tried as hard as I could to bring their presences into the rooms. You know, that's what I'm doing as an artist. And then you have their words, which they chose and which I did not censor, and which, to the Smithsonian's credit, they did not censor.
Yes,
you know,
absolutely, to their credit.
It's a bold thing to do. We live in an incredible country where the state institutions can allow people to have such freedom in this official kind of capacity, because people throw out all kinds of different challenges. I mean, honestly, you know, we did have to do a little line where in some of the curse words or some of the things that, you know, I mean, you know, so adults can figure out exactly what was being said, but maybe people would be offended by profanity, which honestly, I'm glad that there's profanity in the project, in that kind of indicated but not explicit capacity, because I think everyone in the military knows that there's a certain way of speaking.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it brings more breath and life into what was said, in addition to the accompanying portrait, and just to hark back on how this exhibition has been displayed here. One of the things that Jill really, what was very important for her with this exhibition, and she kept saying, this exhibition needs to breathe. It needs to breathe. People need to be able to see the portraits at a slower pace, and they need to be able to take it in a slower pace. And it really worked in our museum. It's been an absolute pleasure having this. And, you know, as much as we've had this since October 10th, and I still haven't been able to see every single piece and read them slowly. So it dawned on me today, and I said, okay, I need to sit down and really look at all the other pieces that I haven't gotten to yet and have that moment. And I was reading Chad Anderson and what he had to say. And unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me to read it, but it is, I feel like in a lot of ways, it sums up what someone does when someone volunteers their time to serve. And at the end of what he's saying and what he's explaining is to say, you don't have to say anything. Just shake my hand. You don't have to ask why I did what I did. Shake my hand and say thank you for doing what you did. You know, and it really is, it's a moment to say thank you for serving this country and keeping us safe for the 99%. So it really is an incredible exhibition. One of the things too is everybody was able to wear whatever they wanted to wear. I love that, because you're normally used to seeing portraits of people, military personnel, and being a military family myself, everybody's in their uniform. And here it's whatever they felt comfortable in. And I think that really lent itself for you capturing their true essence and them feeling comfortable enough to sit with you and speak with you and open up. Would you agree? Or, I mean, how do you feel about that? I thought it was a cool concept.
Well, yeah, the whole idea of self-expression was really key to this, you know, for everybody I was working with. But it's also like what I am as an artist, what I'm concerned with, what I like, just what I do, what I'm obsessed by, is showing people as people, you know.
Right.
So that's what this is all about, you know. Like when you're saying with Chad Anderson and saying thank you, I think you know, what I really want to do is to, you know, go a little bit, you know, in a way beyond a simple appreciation of the service and get to the individual. You know, I don't know if that makes sense.
Absolutely. This whole exhibition is that in a nutshell. It's getting to the individual and who they are. And that's what we were talking about too. It's your neighbor, your family member, someone you're passing in the grocery store. These are people who help us. And we're also everyday people at the same time. It's, you know, I think that's part of it too, as you see in the exhibition.
Right. Yeah, and I think with the idea of the, you know, the volunteering and the small group of people who actually serve the U.S. in a military capacity, you know, one of the things that makes it kind of hard to see the people themselves, as far as I'm concerned, is that there's a lot of advertising to try and get people into service. And that's, you know, that because we have a volunteer force, we need to have a lot of entertainment or cultural things, or you know, like things that are aimed at recruiting. And now I think that this is the choice that we have in America, that we have a volunteer force. This is the way we have things. And I think there's very few people who would actually want a draft. But in order to kind of go through you know, the recruiting level, and also the kind of the backlash to the recruiting dialogue, you know, like there's a recruiting dialogue in our culture, and then there's an anti-recruiting dialogue. And in some ways, what I really want to do is kind of get to the center of things, where we're looking at the thing as it is. You know, we're looking at the real thing. We're getting beyond that politicization, where people are using the presence of the veteran for either one thing or another, or where, yeah, I mean, just things that kind of that bring things out of the human dimension. To serve in war, to serve one's country, is something that I think has been, I mean, it's likely to be with us forever. You know, and it has a lot of dimensions, and it's a very human thing, and that's where it really gets complicated. Is that this is humanity.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that I've noticed with some of the guests that come in too, they always comment about how diverse, and that's something we touched on earlier, how diverse it is, all the portraits here, whether it be race or gender or even the armed service that each individual sitter represents. Talk a little bit about how that came about too. It's really interesting.
Right. Well, one of the things that's amazing about the American Armed Forces is that they try and recruit and fill the ranks according to what the census looks like. We try in America to have a representational armed force. So what I did was I went into you know, the statistics of the race statistics that were available at the time, and gender statistics, and all the things about, you know, like diversity in the armed forces goes far beyond that. As I mentioned earlier, you know, it's not only the things that we usually think of, but also in terms of job and rank and all of these things, very important to show as much as we can the full scope of things.
Yeah, it's really amazing to go through and see so much diversity in this exhibition of military personnel. So it's been really enjoyable. So I want one of the final questions I want to come to is this: you're going to be forever tethered to these veterans and their stories. So where do you go from here? How do you move on creatively, and what are you currently working on?
Well, thank you very much for asking that. Yes, it's true that I do feel like, like there's always going to be a piece of me that's part of this work. Of course, this work's always going to be present for me and all the people that I worked with to make this. And I have to thank everybody who was part of this, of course, because it's their contributions that really made this happen. And a lot of times they made this happen at great kind of expense of time and energy and just difficulty in getting the words out that you see on the walls there. What I'm working on next is, or what I have been working on ever since is, I am obsessed with the human face. I love the idea of humanity. The light of this project, the thing that kept me going beyond like these kind of wonderful encounters that I would have with the people I was doing the portraits of, beyond those deep meanings, it was also the ability to dwell on, to really sink into perceiving another person. This is, and dwelling on the nature of the human face. So what I'm doing now is quite a bit different, but what I'm trying to do is portraits that reflect humanity in a general kind of way, and that is a very difficult project where I'm trying to kind of get into an idea of humanity that doesn't have any borders. In some ways, try and represent people without some of these questions of history. Trying to get into just a kind of a pure meditation on what the nature of the human face is, and you can see what it is, what kind of these pathways open up on my website at mattmitchellart.com. But I think, as with a lot of art projects, it's kind of difficult to put it into words.
Absolutely. I'm sure it is. And I'm looking forward. After tonight, I'm going to go take a look at that website right now. I'm excited that we were able. I know. I'm so excited that we were able to finally sit down and see each other face to face and chit chats. I know we had a couple of conversations prior to this, but it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you, Matt. I'm so excited. One of the things that I think is the worst part about this whole thing is the fact that you and Myriam and Patricia weren't able to come down here for a closing ceremony or even an opening ceremony because of COVID. But I hope that you'll come visit us at some point after COVID, when it's a little bit safer to come down and travel. But again, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you and getting to know you and the portraits a little bit better and being able to delve into that. And I'm going to talk to my production assistant, Natasha, over here. Natasha, do we have any questions from the audience? Thank you so much. I think we answered a lot of those great questions that we probably had. The one thing I want to do is just go ahead and say thank you to all of our viewers on Facebook and YouTube Live. ArtSplaining will be back again January 28th at 6 p.m. with Cheryl Mader, photographer extraordinaire and exhibiting artist at the start of the new year, on January 19th. That's when we're opening up the next exhibition. Join us during our reception for for Cheryl Mader on January 21st by signing up on Eventbrite with 20 of your friends and family, and you'll have your own personal 1-hour private showing that evening. Thanks again to Matt Mitchell, Patricia Putnam from Florida Humanities Council, in addition to Myriam Springuel from SITES, Smithsonian Institutions Traveling Exhibition Services, Vice Mayor Simmons, Executive Director for the museum, Jill Brown. And I also would like to take a couple of additional thank yous and thank our production assistant, Natasha Ramirez, and the Coral Springs Museum of Art's amazing team. One other shout out, I'd like to shout out to my family, Clay, Sebastian, and Loretta. I love you so much. Happy holidays, everybody. Have a safe and happy new year. And that's ArtSplaining for 2020.